What do Devontae Adams, George Kittle, Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel, and Amon-Ra St. Brown all have in common? Well, besides being some of the most reliable hands in the game of football, they're also the stars of the new Netflix series Receiver. From the same team that brought you the show Quarterback, Receiver takes you deep inside the huddles, locker rooms, and personal lives of 5 of the best pass catchers and playmakers in the NFL. Catch Receiver now playing only on Netflix.
Hello mate, how are you? Andy from myfootballbook.com, and welcome all to our new project, Book Corner. We're going to talk about that in a short while, but I want to talk about you first, Andy, how you started your Twitter and your Facebook page of myfootballbooks.com and the merchandising and your website. So for the first 5 or 10 minutes, let's talk all about you. So I'm going to do no work. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you rattle on.
Right. I would try my best. So, well, firstly, thanks for obviously inviting me on. So to be understated to say it's a privilege, because I know obviously you speak with the likes of Terry Curran and obviously Alan Hudson, etc. It's quite a privilege to talk to you as well. So thanks for inviting me. But yeah, so in terms of myself, I wish I had an interesting backstory as them two people. But it's the book. My football book started as I don't know if you call it a project, but it's essentially, actually, if you went to my website, I put a bit about us or about me when I first started. It was essentially, it was back in March and April when obviously COVID kicked in, and I was basically furloughed from our company, it's crazy when you think back in what now, was it 18 months back, etc., and all the uncertainty around that, and obviously being a big fan of football books anyway. I was finding myself I had a bit more time basically to do a bit more reading, and essentially how the next bit goes is literally, as my wife says quite often, I was sitting there on my phone looking for another book to read, because I think I'd just finished The Age of Football. I remember it clearly, actually, by David Goldblatt. Brilliant book, by the way, epic book, a big chunk of the book, about 400 pages. And she said to me, "Do you need another football book? Another football book?" And it just made me start thinking, because she was saying, where are you looking anyway for these books, recommendations? And that's what just got me thinking, oh, okay, because the way I've done it before, probably like lots of other people, you go through your social media, Twitter, you look at what's online, whether you're Amazon, Waterstones, etc. And it just got me thinking, why don't I try and do something that I think would be of interest to others and try and put them in one area, really? And that's kind of where it kind of evolved from, really, as a starting point, Gabbie. And, yeah, that's how we got to, yeah.
A lot of projects have started via COVID. I think it is the age of the silicon chip. And if we go back to the time that I love to reference and look at, the 70s, the silicon chip probably was invented, but in our school we had no computers, so it wouldn't have worked then. But all the stars have aligned, and it's opened up a whole new ball game, literally. And I'm absolutely loving your project, because it is a project. Do you sell? Because me and TC do talk about you on our podcast, the Current View.
Listening.
And it's, Book Corner is a feature that we have on there, and it's all organically grown. And I've connected with you. You've retweeted stuff, and I love what you do. So it really has just grown from that. A couple of retweets and shares on Facebook, etc. TC said to me, ask Andy, Gabbie, you've got to ask Andy, where you've got your website and you've got all the recommendations for your books, can people go there and buy it from you and you earn some corn from it? Because I noticed that when you touch the book and you try and put it into your cart, it tends to go to Amazon. So what's the crack there? Can you monetize it, is what I'm saying? Because both me and TC reckon you should be able to.
Yeah, well, you can. To be quite clear, this is very much a hobby, and I enjoy it. This is very well. I know a lot of people, things like with the projects we get involved, because you love it. You love the subject, don't you? You're involved in. So it certainly doesn't, pay for a mortgage or anything like that. So, basically anything I do, let's say, you want to say earn, is pretty much to cover any costs of hosting a website. But essentially, so Amazon, for example, you have like an Amazon affiliate, so where you get like a certain percent of when books are sold through your links, etc. And I'm talking pennies. I really am talking pennies. And I don't really do it for that. It's a bit of an odd one. I don't do it for the money at all. I got the satisfaction that someone might enjoy the book because they've seen it on the website or had seen it recommended. But what I do also do is obviously promote other book publishers through the website. So it's not just Amazon links. I'll also promote obviously the likes of Pitch Publishing, who are excellent, and lots of others are out there. So I'll use their links as well. So Pen and Sword Books is one that I've come across fairly recently. Got some excellent old books. They've got I like the history as well. So the history of football. Obviously, 70s is a great time, and further back, etc. So, but what I have done recently is to try and, I suppose, not sort of monetize it or anything like that. I've done things like, again, people contact me about your mugs. Do you actually sell mugs? Yeah. And then I thought, okay, if someone might have been interested in buying a mug, I'd promote that. Sell that as like a gift and bookmarks, etc. and things like that. So. It directly, no, I don't sell books at all. That I'm in there very much to promote books. That's why I don't, any book across. There's so much range, as you well know, Gabbie, in terms of subject areas. It's fascinating.
It's an enormous range of books that we have out there in the in the ether of football books. It used to be. Well, I suppose, it started off after the war, really, didn't it? And pros that were retiring started writing books. You got Charles Buck, and we covered Charles on Time Vault in this week's podcast, The Current View. I didn't realise that he co-founded the Footballers' Writers Association. So, it's all kind of developed, and then, things happen, and you have the biographies, the autobiographies, then there's lots of podcasters that are writing books, etc. So we're going to talk about all of that. I love your icon. So I guess in essence to the question that TC levelled at you, if people go subscribe, because I've subscribed to your myfootballbooks.com, and then purchase from your site, then financially it gives you a little bit of corn, whereas if we just go directly to Amazon, you don't get anything. So it's beneficial to you for us to direct any inquiries of any book towards your website and buy it off yours rather than just go to Amazon. And do you have to have a PayPal account, or do the Amazon take it out of how you usually purchase books from Amazon, but just through you as a third party?
Yeah, you have an account that's kind of set up with you and Amazon, so you get like it's very, as authors will know, authors out there will know, you make very little in books. You do really do. Yeah. You literally do it for the fun and love of it. Yeah. I'd love to call myself an author at some stage, but you do it for the love of it. But yeah, that's essentially how. But yeah, not everyone wants to use Amazon as well. I guess I I only recognise that, understand that. Not others will use, because I'd always encourage people obviously to go to your local bookshop as well. I do as well myself. So
it's easy though, Andy, isn't it? Just to go onto your.
It can be online,
website.
Definitely.
Because that's how I do. I go online and I buy the books. I just find it so much easier these days, and I see so many books that you've promoted. You talked about your mugs. I love the icon there. It's nice and simple. My football books. It's a little football as well. It's eye-catching. And when you see that over the socials, you look at it and it really is a striking icon. So,
Thank you.
Did you design that?
I did actually. Yeah, it was very well. I don't know if it was a play on words, but I was thinking when I was thinking in terms of the name of the website, and I was thinking something to do with football books, and I was thinking, your football book, and I just thought my football books, and I suppose it's like my football books that I've read and share with others, and then people build their own libraries, and so they've got their own version of my football books. But the logo is that I always loved the football. The classic football is the Adidas. Oh, it's gone from my head now. The old World Cup ball. Isn't it? That's it. The tango. That's it. Yeah. So that's what it is. The little tango there, and with just a little, a little kick, I suppose, using the lines from the Y on the my, etc. And it kind of. I'm not a marketing or anything like that. It just come to me one day, and my wife had a look at it, and she played around with it, and and my daughter got involved as well, actually. So yeah. Well, my 7-year-old daughter wants to have a look at it as well. So
congratulations
combination of things.
To all, because it's a fantastic icon. People pay thousands to get icons like that,
wow.
and I think it's fantastic. You also do a monthly newsletter, don't you? We're going to get onto that a little bit later, because I want to talk about some of the books that are coming out. Because as the clocks go forward and the television gets better, so do the books as well, because I think that they realise that us old uns that read books, because kids don't read books, they just go online and do what they do. And I think the memory span of a kid is probably akin to a goldfish. But us older fellas, we like to read the books because we like to pick up a book. I've got a book in my hand here.
Yeah.
In fact, it's Busby Shankly Steen, the makers of modern football, The Three Kings by Leo Monaghan, which is one of your recommendations to Book Corner. Now, I'm not the greatest of readers, and you did talk about you read a book recently, and the books are coming out fast and furious in October. So a little bit later in the podcast, we're going to be talking about some of the new releases. But how many books do you read? I must admit, I'm the worst reader of books because I buy books. My missus will say, you're buying another book that you're never going to read, and she's absolutely true. But I do that many podcasts, and I use them for references mainly. So I love to buy the books. I get a thirst to buy the books, but I rarely read the books. Now, you read them, you buy them, you promote them, and you read them as well, don't you? How many books would you read in, say, a month or a 12-month period?
I probably would say I'd at least read one book a week.
Really?
I'd say, probably maybe one every fortnight. I suppose it depends on the thickness of the book, of course, as well. I think I referred to earlier on Age of Football by David Goldblatt, which, if you've ever seen it, his first book was called The Ball Is Round. These are epic books, so that's something that's going to take you longer than a week or so to read. But I quite often I can finish a good book in maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 sittings. But maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. It depends a lot. Obviously how much time you got on your hands, etc. as well. So, but I'll probably, a maximum maybe a couple of months, etc. So,
Andy, for me,
it makes me sound like I've got a lot of time on my hands, but I suppose that's just since I've been a young age, I've always enjoyed reading. So anytime I've watched TV, I've watched documentaries, let's say, on Netflix, tend to be football related, but otherwise, I've always enjoyed just reading. So I think it's just, when you're late at night kind of thing, or, a weekend, when you've got a bit of time in your hands, I've generally got a book in my hand.
Wow, the last time I read a book in a week, it had got crayons attached to the magazine. It wouldn't have been a book, it would have been a magazine. I'm absolutely... Wow. Do you do...
Well, that's where I started from, for your magazines, because I remember as a young kid, when I was, 10 years old, I used to love, Shoot magazine, Match magazine, and, and that's where I started. I used to always love reading the Sunday papers as well, etc. I still do, There's something about holding a book as well, isn't there? Different to, I know you can read Kindle, etc., but I think holding a book is so much more,
It's
there's
personal,
something about it.
It's like when we were kids, we used to go to the record shops and we used to buy vinyl. We had a physical copy in our hand. We owned that record, and we looked forward to going out and. But I mean, now obviously you can buy them online. But I just think there's nothing better than holding the physical copy in your hand rather than just having something that it's here today, gone tomorrow. And my missus will always say, "Why don't you take the books to a charity shop?" Are you having a laugh? I don't give away football books. I keep all my football books. Do you do reviews as well of the football books that you read?
Yes. I don't do as much as I used to. When I first started the website, to be frank, I had a bit more time on my hands as well. Yeah. So, and I think I enjoy doing the reviews and just, and putting them on the website. But they do take a bit of time, to be honest, Gabbie. So I don't tend to do as many as you used to. Because the more time I'm writing and writing up a book review, it's less time I'm actually reading.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit like that. So I always say that to anyone listening as well, if I ever want to do a book review, I'm happy to share that through the website.
Yep.
And I know I've had a couple of people, and I do share them their book reviews as well. So because it's the greater good sharing, in terms of. Other recommendations from other people, and that's what I've tried to do through the, through the social media as well, and interact with people. Because I want to find out what books are they reading at the moment, what do they enjoy, what do they like, etc. So, but I don't do as many as book reviews as I did do, but I have done them in the past. Depends. If it's a book I really look forward to, I probably would do a review on it as well. So,
what was the last book that you purchased?
The last book I purchased. would be Soul and Glory.
Oh, okay.
It's I say this book. It's more of a picture book actually. It's a pictorial one. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's Soul and Glory. It's English football from the 1950s. I think up to the 1989. So it's wonderful.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So English football. I've got it here in front of me. 1950 to 1989, and. It's brilliant, absolute wonderful images, and it really takes you like on a bit of a tour through history from football, and you see how much it's changed, because there's no doubt it's dramatically changed since 1992 and the Premier League when it started.
Don't talk to me about the Premier League, and don't talk to me. We don't talk about that. We're talking about old books. Although I've got to say, Troy Deeney has got a book out, Redemption,
today.
That comes out today, doesn't it?
It does.
All joking aside, I do love the modern game as well. But what I don't like about the modern game and the modern Sky TV and Match of the Day is that it tends to just focus on the now. And I think that for the now is great and the future is great. But I think you always have to recognise the past, because without the past, you have no present and you have no future. And those players of today and of tomorrow, they need their inspirations, and that comes from players of the past. And I did note that when Jimmy sadly passed away, they did put up posts of Jimmy Greaves on Match of the Day and Sky Sports, etc. And there was the all-time top 10 goal scorers from the get-go to now. And I thought that was fantastic, because the likes of, there's only 3 players that scored over 300 goals: the great Jimmy Greaves, the great Steve Bloomer, and the great Dixie Dean. And I think that we should always remember our past heroes. And that's why I love books, and that's why I love doing what I do, because I'll always reference them star players, even though they may be players that I've never seen play. They may have passed away before I was born, but they're still part of that football journey. And I think it's so important to pay respect to those players.
Definitely, some of the wonderful stories. Even the one I've just recently bought, Soul and Glory, and I think actually it's a great title for the book. And even through looking at some of the images, and you get that through words as well. I do. When you're reading words, you get a feeling in terms of how football, it's very, very different, wasn't it, then, in terms of their connection with the fans, etc. And, a book comes to my mind as you were talking then, called When Footballers Were Skint by John Henderson.
Yeah.
And it talks about how literally the players, at the end of the game, they get on the bus and, go back home with the fans, on that bus travelling home. It's completely different to nowadays. And, you couldn't imagine sitting next to Ronaldo or something like that, could you, on the bus home after a game at Old Trafford? But again, that's just how way football's changed, isn't it? So, and I don't fault modern footballers. If they're giving this money, aren't they? If someone wants to pay them ridiculous amounts of money, then good on them, really. So, but it's obviously changed greatly, hasn't it? So I echo what you're saying, absolutely.
Absolutely.
When you think of,
I've interviewed so many players of the past and wouldn't change the era that they played in for anything. And mainly my focus of attention is the 70s. And there is a player that played in the 70s that retired that could actually retire. Because football is a short career and they're only in the 30s. And some players, I've just done a recent one with Browne Little, who has a book coming out, My Aston Villa. And Browne retired, of course, at the age of 27. So if he lives to 87, he's got 60 years. You can't live off what he earned at Villa for 60 damn years. They've always had that grounding, football players of yesteryear. I'm not convinced that the modern player has got that grounding, and going forward will always have that grounding because they earn so much money. They're so far out of touch with the modern, with the working man that fundamentally used to follow the game of football.
And I think you're right, and that's probably where the books you enjoy most, is the ones where you do feel that connection, can't you? You can kind of share that kind of story. You can share I can picture that. You can picture in your mind what they're talking about, etc. Because you've kind of been there, haven't you? Yeah. Etc. So, but it's a bit different to, I don't know, reading some, footballer nowadays. It's when they're talking about how their lifestyle. It's miles away from your man or woman in the street, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it is. I must admit, I wouldn't buy a book from a modern football player. I mean, my favourite player at the moment is Jack Grealish. If a book come out about Jack tomorrow, I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't buy it. He's a 26-year-old kid. And if he
does, I'd leave it to when he's good. The books, in my experience, players as well, when they write an autobiography when they're still playing or just finished playing, it doesn't tend to have the depth of ones where they've left it for a few years. Yeah. There is a few exceptions to that, but the best autobiographies I can think of is when they've left. Yeah, because also you don't have any of that baggage, and because some is a little bit you've got to be careful what you're saying, don't you? If you're still in football, you don't want to offend too many people. Saying that, you read someone like Roy Keane in his two books, he couldn't care less. He writes very much how he is as an individual, so he didn't mind who upsets. And I know he still wants to get him back to management, from what I gather. But yeah, I think just in autobiographies in general, just leave it till your career's finished. Because that's an interesting bit as well, to see what they've done when they've finished that bubble of playing, what they've gone on to do next.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm reading a football book, again, not that I read that many, I have loads, but I don't read many. But for me, it's all about the football. And a book I'm going to just mention here is one of my podcast partners, Alan Hudson, The Working Man's Ballet. I mean, Alan started writing that in 1980. He'll kill me now. I think it wasn't in 1981 because it was on his 31st birthday that he started to pick up the pen while he was in his house in Seattle, in Bellevue, in Seattle. And he just decided to start writing an autobiography. He put it down for many years and then picked it up and carried on writing it. But Uddy thought that he was going to finish his career and stay in Seattle forever. It was a place he says in his book, and he's told me on many occasions, he was born to play in America. He absolutely loved and adored America. But, you read the book, The Working Man's Ballet, and it's just as though you're reading it as Alan Hudson is writing it, he describes games, and you're almost on the pitch playing the game of football alongside Alan Hudson, and those are the books that I connect with, and you almost fall in love with the character, or you feel that that closeness to that.
You can always smell it. You can always smell it when they talk about the change room, don't they, and things like that.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, yeah.
and again, lots of football players have ghost writers that write the book with them, but Alan Hudson wrote all that on his Todd. I mean, he's a very, very intelligent man. He's just as articulate with a pen as he was a genius with his feet. And he's brilliant to listen to as well, isn't he? Some of his stories. I was hearing his story on your recent podcast about Jimmy Greaves. Yes.
Jimmy Greaves was sharing a story, wasn't it, about how when he met with Bobby Moore, did he jumping over the wall?
Yeah.
Just some great stories. Really great.
But Alan tells so many great stories. It's a joy doing the podcast with Uddy. I mean, he's so funny. I mean, he doesn't try and be funny. He just is funny. I mean, they're genuine belly laughs that we do. And he does a lovely writing daily, because he's always blogging on his website. And it's no, well, I suppose it's no, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here, because Uddy always says I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's it goes hand in glove with the way that Uddy played, to the way he writes and the way he blogs. It just, I guess the word that I'm looking for is just natural.
Yeah, and The Working Man's Ballet is a great title for his book, wasn't it? Really?
Well, the book title come from Tony Waddington, who referenced Stoke City and said that it's like watching the Working Man's Ballet. That's where it comes from, Tony Waddington, because football is the working man's ballet, and Uddy has a great love of music as well. So, with My Life, My Music, it's about his life on and off the pitch. And the Working Man's Ballet is an absolutely fantastic read. And we did mention Natural, which leads us nicely to the second book that you recommended the podcast this month, by David Tossell, with a sad passing of James Peter Greaves, the greatest goal scorer. But before we talk about Natural and David Tossell, because he's wrote a number of books, David's quite prolific. Matthew Basil wrote Soul and Glory. Do you know much about Matthew? I've just recently followed him on Twitter.
I know a few of his books, but he's done a handful of books. I think he wrote a few around the FA Cup as well. So he's very much a writer around football history, let's say. So English football history as well. So but he's a great, another great writer. And I think he's an Arsenal fan. I remember reading a book he wrote about. I think it's. Arsenal terrace songs and chants, and it's about from the fans' point of view and songs around that. So he's got quite a different range of areas he's written about. But excellent writer, another excellent writer, and there's so many great writers out there as well. I think the times, certainly nowadays, there's more and more books out there, and I think that goes hand in hand though. So I was reading something fairly recent in terms of the popularity of books has gone up. I would actually say with younger age as well, I can see, which is great, because I'm very much one as well about promoting just reading in general. I think it's very important for people. I think it's shown benefits you can have, without digressing too much, in terms of your states of mind and things like that. And it helps you emphasise and etc. and things, in one way or another. The benefits of reading, basically. But so many great authors like Matthew Basil. But I can't think of a couple of other books I'm sure he's done as well. I'm not doing him justice, but this Soul and Glory is fantastic.
Super.
Along with the imageries inside it as well.
Natural by David Tossell. And David's an Arsenal fan as well.
Is he? Right. Oh, is he? Okay.
I believe he's got a book. Well, I know. he's got a book coming out about Don Howe. Because I did put him in contact with Uddy, because Don Howe is the only coach that Alan liked. And if you read the Working Man's Ballot, you will find that out as well. All the stories. Uddy doesn't like coaches. But how do you coach someone like Alan Hudson, George Best, Frank Worthington, Stan Bowles?
Yeah.
You know, you don't. You just allow them to go on a football pitch and play football. And that's pretty much what Tony Waddington said. When he signed him, he said, Al, you're doing all the right things, just in the wrong order. Go out there and play football. I won't tell you how to play football, because I bought you because I know that you can play. And I think it's being a natural, isn't it? Which is Jimmy Greaves, and that's the title of that book, isn't it? He's just a natural talent, and his ability. And I think I remember. There was a quote that came out when they were obviously in the sad passing, in terms of how nonchalant he was in terms of putting a ball in the back of a net. It was just so relaxed. He was just such a natural player. He just passed the ball
fascinating life as well.
Yeah, he passed the ball into the back of the net, didn't he? You know, TC always uses the phrase pace and place. And I think Jimmy Greaves was greatest exponent of that. He didn't blast the ball and smash the net open. He just pace and place. And Jimmy just knew where he wanted. And he glided past players, didn't he? It was just everything that you'd want in a forward. I mean, he had the looks. He just had everything. He was the English Georgie Best, really, wasn't he, Jimmy Greaves? Yeah,
he was. And it's great you read about his life story. There's bits I just love in terms of the things you don't know. You know, of course, he didn't, playing obviously the World Cup final, and how much that cut him up. Yeah. And I remember watching an interview and he was talking about how, wasn't he? He felt he was about the only person in the whole of that stadium that didn't feel part of it, because it was a strange experience for him. That he wasn't the biggest stage of all, and he wasn't playing in it. And you hear, things like that you read in the book, and you read about their life and such from through their eyes, etc. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Uddy always says that about
England. Different perspective he gives you.
Yeah, Uddy says that. I mean, England didn't play, or England played without their three best players. Jimmy Greaves, well, not their best players, but George Eastham was another player that should have played, and Peter Thompson of Liverpool, if Uddy would have picked the England team, and they probably have had Simpson or the boy from Chelsea, whose name escapes me at the moment, but he was one of the centre-halves at Chelsea that were so prominent under Tommy Docherty.
They'll come back to me as well in a minute. I know you're trying to think of Gabbie.
Marvin.
Marvin.
What's it? Oh, no. We'll move on, and his name will crop up in a bit. Either that, I'll text Uddy. But yeah, you know, when you look at it, I mean, Uddy says, well, you could have had anybody really to play alongside Bobby Moore, and I guess Bobby was that great a player and great a character and a fantastic leader, and Jimmy was all of that as well. I mean, 357 league goals will never ever be surpassed. And I didn't realise until Al was telling me that story when he was the co-driver in the rally, and he ended up in Colombia. While Bobby was under house arrest. It's a great story. I mean, there ain't many footballers that could have done that.
I know, it's incredible,
isn't it? He got a great personality, and then of course he linked up with the Saint after he'd finished playing football, and that's the thing with TV. I guess there's so many kids that would watch Saint and Greavesy and go, "Oh, look at this presenter. Did he ever play football?" It's like,
I know.
Again, books. Read your books, kids, and you'll find out.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? And then you obviously after his when he hung up his boots, did he play for West Ham? And then I did actually I saw an interview with him the other day, and it was around about about the 80s, in the 80s, 90s when he's doing Saint Greavesy. And he said, me and George Best are thinking of writing a book about the 70s. And he looks at the camera and says, so if anyone knows where we were during the 1970s, please get in touch. Just his great sense of humour, because obviously he went a bit downhill, didn't he? He hit the drink, basically. So,
but again, some people would say, is he joking? And he probably was, but probably also wasn't as well. Because he he probably didn't remember that much of the 70s. He'd remember an awful lot of the 60s, of course. But I think Jimmy started drinking a bit more heavily when he went to West Ham as the it was a part player swap, wasn't it? Probably involving a bit of money as well when Martin Peters left West Ham.
Yeah, it was a bit of an acrimonious end, wasn't it, when he left Spurs?
Yeah, I think so. But it was his great mate, Bobby Moore, that probably smoothed it over. And I think he found the greatest drinking partner in Bobby, because Bobby was a character, and them two, I think them two got into an unbelievable amount of trouble.
Well, he was only 31, I think, when he retired. Jimmy Greaves, I'm just trying to remember. Yeah. It was early 30s, wasn't it? It wasn't.
But a lot of players did, Andy, at that age, didn't they? Back then,
they did.
You know, it's not like now. I mean, you have pristine pitches to play on. They're like bowling greens. I mean, these guys of the 70s, 60s, 70s, they played on like paddy fields, and over Easter they played 3 games in 4 days. It was just absolutely crazy what their bodies had to endure. I mean, you get the modern play. Oh, I'm tired. You don't know what tired is.
Absolutely. You're coming up to this time of year as well, December. You think of some of the football pitches he used to play on, like the likes of Terry. Yeah. He used to play. I remember actually Terry. I've read Terry's recent book as well, Give Me the Ball. Yep. When he was talking about it's called the Boxing Day Massacre, wasn't it? When they beat Sheffield United, I think. Oh yeah. And I can remember seeing. I think you can still find it on YouTube now. And he scores one of the goals, doesn't he? Diving header, and he slides in front of the Sheffield United fans as well. But you can just see the state of the pitch. Yeah. There's not much grass left on it, was there?
There was a lot of 50-pence pieces on it.
Yeah. It is. It's brilliant, isn't it? So what a character again.
An absolute legend, and we will talk about Give Me the Ball, my take on the beautiful game, Terry Curran with John Brindley, foreword by Ron Atkinson, and I've wrote my first introduction to a football book ever in that wonderful book. But I'm doing a podcast with Terry on the game of my life about the Boxing Day Massacre. The game took place at 11 o'clock on the morning due to South Yorkshire Police thinking that there was going to be quite a bit of trouble. So they played the game before the pubs opened on Boxing Day, and Terry did score. Terry was instrumental in that game of Wednesday, putting the blades to the sword literally by 4-0. And Terry also, given the fact that it was Boxing Day and it was pretty cold, he did find time to do a little bit of sunbathing in front of the Sheffield United fans as well. Terry was quite a character. I mean, that book, I haven't read it yet. I must read it, but I have got it signed by me.
It's another one of these books. It's a bit like a lot of the books where you read about some of these greats of the games, and I find myself, probably it takes me a little bit longer to read a book because of the use of YouTube. I find myself looking at, for example, the Boxing Day Massacre. I'll read it and I'm like thinking, actually, I'm just going to Google that now quickly and actually look at it. And you find yourself, and again, it just brings it to life. And obviously that's where it's changed, isn't it, nowadays? But you can do it at a tap of the hand pretty much and see the goals for yourself, really. So brings it even more to life.
And I tend to write notes as well when I'm reading the book. That's why it takes me so long. Yeah. Often I'm making a podcast about the book, so I'm writing notes for reference reasons. But it's a great little picture of TC on the cover. Got an idea, I'm sure he'll kill me. I think it's Blackburn away when he scored the goal, and you can see the celebrating Sheffield Wednesday fans as Terry's looking back. It almost looks as though he's looking into the camera, but that's his favourite photograph ever.
Is it?
Playing. Yeah, yeah. That's why he's got that photo, because that's Terry Curran's favourite photo. And
excellent.
I'm sure it's Blackburn. He has told me a million times, but it's either Blackburn or Barnsley, and I'm going for Blackburn.
He'll come back. He'll come back to you.
He'll kill me if I'm wrong. But like all Terry's tales and the 2 books, The Regrets of a Football Maverick, of course, that he wrote a couple of years ago with John Brindley. Great read, great stories, and a great character. And like many football players of old, used to enjoy a pint. TC didn't drink. He only ever drunk Coke.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I see that. Yeah, he's not. I know. That's
chased a few birds. He chased a few birds, did CC? And we're going to keep the Wimbledon game quiet, and we're not going to say much about that. And also when Inchie kicked off against Liverpool in the Merseyside derby as well, he had a smile on his face, but not as big as TC's smile, I got to say. We'll leave that for another day. But What Was Football Like in the 80s was another book by a wonderful writer and top man as well. Richard Crooks does a lot of retweeting and liking of posts that we put up. And football, the 80s was a great time, wasn't it? The football.
It was fascinating, wasn't it? It was a very. I'm not sure many decades changed quite as much when you see from the start to the end of it.
Yeah.
As much probably as the 80s, in my opinion. Probably the 90s as well, but they're not. But certainly the 80s because of everything that went on. Both on and off the pitch with obviously. You think of the disasters, of course, of that decade, Heysel, Bradford, and of course Hillsborough, which changed a lot of things going into the 90s and pretty much carries on to today. Which I always, when I think about things, it connects me to another book. There's a great book actually about how football's evolved from that time, called The Sun Shines Now, and it's written by one of the survivors from the Hillsborough disaster. It was actually in the pen. It's an incredible story. It rises the hair. I feel the hairs on the back of the neck just thinking of the book itself. But yeah, you go back to the 80s, it was such a change, wasn't it, in terms of slightly getting the evolution of television and football as well. But obviously hooliganism was at its height as well. It was a remarkable decade really for so many reasons. And good football as well. Some great stories. Wimbledon, when you think of that was 1988, wasn't it, when they went on to win the FA Cup? You couldn't imagine that now. When you think, I think it was only 10 years before that. They weren't even in the Football League. I might be wrong, someone might get me on that, but I'm pretty sure they were within 10 years, I think it was, from getting into the actual Football League. Something like that.
I certainly remember a game that Wimbledon played in the FA Cup. Dickie Guy was the goalkeeper. They played against Leeds United, if my memory serves me right. And that would have been probably 74, 75. They were definitely non-league then. So I think you're absolutely spot on. With about a 10-year period, they went from non-league to win the FA Cup. And of course, Aston Villa in the 70s were in the third division, 71. And then within 71, 72, within 10 years of that, 71, 72, they won the league and they won the European Cup. So, you look at that and the commercialism of football and the commercialisation of football. And you're right, TV started to play a role in the game. There was more live games. There was the invention of Sky in the next decade, but that was spoken about during the 80s, and it was the age of the yuppie and the mobile phone, and things were really kind of changing from that 70s of, I guess, in the music scene, the glam rock, and then the tone and that, and the punk, and the 80s just went mad. And in a football sense, really changed. And I think you're right, looking back, I don't think any decade had so much of a differential than the 80s. And I think the music reflected it as well. Everything went in the 80s.
I think football does that, doesn't it? There's so many links, football, to the whole society, really, and the culture. I think the musical side, political side as well, if you wanted to go on that as well, in terms of what was happening in the 80s when you think of Thatcher and all of that. It's all, all of that's connected in one way or another, isn't it? But I think, again, you think of some of the characters just, obviously, Brian Clough, he was in his heights, of course, management-wise in the 70s, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, certainly the late 70s, obviously, with the incredible things they did at Forest, but then in the 80s, you got the rise of Sir Alex Ferguson, just an incredible time. And the book by Richard Crooks is a fabulous book. It really is. Yeah, it captures that.
Richard's done a few, hasn't he? What was football like in the 60s? And Grandad, what was football like in the 70s? I haven't got his 60s book, but I've got his 80s books. As soon as you put it up there, I went and bought the 80s book, because I do. As soon as you put things up, I go and buy the damn books. You've cost me a fortune, mate.
Well, sorry about that, Gabbie.
Okay. But the Grandad, what was football like in the 70s? And the front of that is a brilliant cover with the glasses, the coffee table and the mug, which I love the way that you do that. You put your mug on the coffee table and put the book. I just think it's fantastic. And the picture on the front, of course, is Pele in 1972 playing against the Owls. And you look at that spine top, and I tell you what, I don't think there's many better pictures than a full spine cop at Hillsborough.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Then Wednesday nights a different class, aren't they?
They are, yeah. No, that picture kind of thing. I haven't got the book in front of me now, but I know the one is the TV, isn't it? And it's got the picture of Pele. I think all the players are attracted to him, aren't they? But you got it in the background, haven't you? In the cop, and it's just phenomenal, isn't it? It's just, how did people? When you think about that, you go to football. You know, how did they get from the front to the back and things like that? If you ever wanted to go taller, obviously, you can kind of remember those days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can't move.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, in terms of how it's changed.
It's just, I mean, if you showed that to a kid now, they'd go, don't be daft. Where's the seat? Where do you know where you're standing? Well, you don't. Yeah. You just stand there, and you just end up there, and when they score, you might start at the back, but you end up somewhere down the middle. It was just a different age, and it was a wonderful age, and I always reference, to a certain degree, I still live in the 70s, and this is the current book that I'm reading. I'm on page 101. I've been on 101 for about 3 months, and My Football Books bookmark is on that, because what I used to do is just fold the page over, and I knew where it was. But I've got your bookmark, and it does that now. And there's also another book that I'm reading at the moment. I am the worst reader ever. Is A Time of My Life by Roy Cavanagh, MBE. Now, I've done a few podcasts with Roy, Chapter of My Life, and he's a top man, and he specialises in Manchester United books. He's a big United fan, and I'm a big fan of Roy Cavanagh. Very clever, very witty man, very knowledgeable man. And I did say to him, that front picture, there's one of the babes, there's one of Old Trafford, the cricket ground, he's a big cricket fan. And is that Manchester bus there with docks on it? No, Gabbie. It's Salford. It's like there's such rivalry, and that's what you get. By talking to people, you get an understanding of, okay, Salford isn't a part of Manchester, but it kind of is, you know. Yeah,
no, they soon tell you, don't they? I know he's a prolific writer, actually. I know he's written, I think it's 20-odd books, isn't he, really, of Manchester United? But there's a similar, actually, for Manchester City, a guy called Gary James. I hope I'm getting these names right off the top of my head. He's a prolific writer on the other side of Manchester. So, the non-Salford part.
But what I liked about this book as well, it's an unpublished book. There's only about 50 done so far. And I said, well, you really need to publish it. It's great. It gives great credit to Manchester City and the Manchester City team of the 50s. And I didn't realise, I mean, I think they had a player who's, I think his name is Ken Barnes, but he was Peter Barnes' dad. I didn't realise he played for Man City. And that's the thing when I half read these books, you know, and I wish I could read them more and have more time, because you do find out things that didn't
you never know.
No, and I didn't. I knew that they were a damn good team in the 50s, because Bert Trautmann played for and broke his neck against my team, Birmingham City, in the final, and that was the Revy plan. Where he was the first. As we hear now, they're playing with a deep line, a false number 9.
Yeah.
Come on, kids. Don Revy done that in 1956. I mean...
Oh, I know. You do, I must admit, when you watch, that's a little bit of when the Sky Sports, when you see them doing the tactics and, you know, how that's never been done before. It's like, well, never been done before.
And Talk Sport. Some of the producers on
You're rewriting history here.
Oh, they're wet between the ears, aren't they? It's exactly. They think that they've just invented the wheel, But I didn't realise the wheel was invented in the 1800s, and we started kicking that wheel around, or the ball around, in proper league terms in 1888. But it just is incredible that the lack of knowledge, and certainly I think the lack of respect for the game of football that you get from the modern broadcasters. It really annoys me.
And I think also, without you can do well by reading the books and things like, well, Jonathan Wilson's a fabulous writer.
Oh, yeah, big fan.
I'm just thinking of his book, Inverting the Pyramid, where it's a history of football tactics, and that just gives you an insight into how things have evolved over, like you say, the 100-odd years, etc., how times have evolved.
It's probably the only book from Jonathan that I wouldn't buy, because I'm not a fan of tactics. I don't believe in tactics.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm a fan of players.
Yeah.
And players win games, tactics don't.
Yeah.
I don't get tactics. And Uddy don't get tactics. TC don't get tactics. I don't think any top player gets tactics. And, the game, okay, yes, it has evolved, but it hasn't really. Again, they're reinventing the wheel, like we've just alluded to, about the Revy plan and the deep lying central striker. I hate this new word, double pivot. They use a double pivot. Oh, come on, mate. They use two players that can't play football and sit in front of a back four that can't defend. Johnny Giles nailed it. If your back four can defend, you don't need a defensive midfield player. Please tell me, out of me and Billy, who was a defensive player in that great Leeds team, because never had one.
Yeah,
and that's the thing with the modern game. Great players of yesteryear didn't need double pivots.
I think you'd enjoy a book that's just come out actually by a guy called Jim Keogh. Is the book's called, let me get this right, Is It Me or Is Modern Football SH? Yeah, you can fill in the rest, etc. And he picks out a number of things in there, how things are irritating, let's say, and pundits certainly get it. Yeah, so they come out of all those cliches and what have you.
I don't mind the odd cliche as long as it's a decent cliche. But
there's actually a book on cliches as well. There's a football. There is actually a football cliche. It's a brilliant book actually by Adam Hurley, where it's about all the cliches like park the bus, transfer war chest and things like that. But anyway,
well, Ron was one of the first to come out with the old cliches. One, show us a lollipop and the wide awake, the early doors and wide awake club, and Ron Atkinson was one. David Coleman, of course, was probably the king of the cliches, wasn't he? I mean, David Coleman commentated in riddles, but he was an absolute genius. A lovely football book that I love these kind of books because you can dip in, dip out. It's only a little book here. It's Football Oddities by Tony Matthews. Curious facts, coincidences, and stranger than fiction stories from the world of football. And I actually look at that in our podcast. I do a Strange But True. So I have a look at different pages and, I like that. That's an interesting fact. And then just bring it out to play because there's that many great oddities in football and daft things. And you think, no, that couldn't have happened, but it did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so many stories, isn't there? So you mentioned some. I think you mentioned. I can't know what you're referring to. You said about a broken neck. And sorry.
Bert Troutman. Yeah, there's a book about
Bert
that.
Troutman. Yeah. That's incredible. That's an incredible book again. I think it's on Netflix at the moment, or it might be on BBC iPlayer. There's a 2-hour documentary about his life, and it's one of the rare times my wife sat with me and watched something related to football, and she was just, it's a true story. It is absolutely true. He was, part of the Hitler Youth, and then fought in Germany, and he fought on the front line in the Second World War, and then goes on to play in an FA Cup final, breaks his neck, carries on. It's just an incredible story, isn't it? So, but again, I must admit, I didn't know fully or really about that until I read the book. I knew a little bit about it, but remarkable stories, aren't they?
Being a Birmingham City supporter, I know all about that. It was the challenge with the great Peter Murphy.
Yeah,
Murphy.
Yeah, of course.
And
Birmingham in the final.
Yeah, he just broke one of the bones, didn't he? He didn't realise at the time, of course, but played on with a broken neck, and City ran out 3-1 winners. And I mean, you look at it as a Birmingham City fan, even the goalkeeper broke his neck and we still couldn't win the damn game of football. Another book that I want to give a mention to, I'm doing a podcast with Peter Kitchen, the game that he played against Chelsea in 1978. I mean, Kitch was a great player in his day and a top goal scorer. And I love the title because there's some lovely titles of football books, isn't there? The Goal Gourmet. I mean, what? His name's Kitchen and the Goal Gourmet. What a play on words. It's fantastic, isn't it? And that iconic Orient kit. Because, back in them days, Orient were in what would now be called the Championship, and Kitch was top of the pops in the goal scoring charts. I mean, they were a bloody good team back in the late 70s, Leighton Orient. I mean, you don't hear much of Leighton or the Orient. It's just Orient, isn't it? They even had a train named after them, though they were that good. Yeah.
I think he Doncaster Rovers as well, as I recall.
Kitch at the bar in 74 that would have... at Anfield that would have knocked Liverpool out of the FA Cup that they went on to win, of course, against Newcastle United in the 74 final. But Kitch had that little bit of luck on that day in January. Liverpool would have been knocked out. And you do need that luck. I did have a debate on Facebook some time ago where somebody was trying to tell me that there's no luck in football, it's all science. And I said, that's absolute load of bollocks, mate. You need a lot of luck in football, to be quite truthful.
Absolutely. Of course you do. You definitely need lady luck on your side.
And how many managers said that? If you can't be a good manager, be a lucky one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's something. Brian Clough comes out with loads of quotes today. I'm sure he's got a quote around there. Something along those lines around luck. It's normally rolls. His football. He would always just say, "Give the ball to John Robertson." When I think about Brian Clough,
we
maybe you can create your own luck. Just give it to John Robertson.
We got a fat lad.
Yes, give it to the fat lad. That's it. Out on the wing. Yeah.
I mean, that's how he used to talk to him, didn't he? TC absolutely loved Brian. He said, I never once heard him lose his temper. Yeah. I never once seen him drink. Absolutely loved and adored Brian Clough. And I think Cloughie was, I guess, listening to players that played under Cloughie, he was a lion, but at heart he was a big pussycat. He had an absolute heart of gold, Brian Clough did. But he just had this public persona, young man, and he would talk down to the media. Yeah. You people on Match of the Day, less talk and more football.
That's it. And they'd be doing an interview with John Motson exactly along those lines, wasn't it?
And do you
remember quite a famous one.
Yeah, Parkinson. I'm Parkinson, Mohammed Ali. Clough, I've had enough. And they said, what do you want to do? I want to fight him.
I know. What a character.
Yeah, I mean, and some great football books about Brian Clough as well. I mean, there must be, I don't know, I've probably got 4 or 5 in my library about the great man. And Jonathan Wilson wrote one of them. I think he did. Nobody Says Thank You, is it? Yeah,
great line. Yeah, great title as well. Yeah, but my favourite Brian Clough one, I must admit, it springs to my mind. It's called "Provided." Again, great title. "Provided You Don't Kiss Me."
Yes.
It's 20 Years of Brian Clough by Duncan Hamilton, who's one of the great writers, and that's a stunning book on Brian Clough. I'd recommend that.
Cloughie would do that, wouldn't he? Come here and give us a kiss.
Yeah.
And he would always, he was just like, remember the Forest fan invaded the pitch and he gave him a right slap. I think he was dressed up like Max Wall, wasn't he? Not Cloughie, but the Forest fan. He gave him a right banging. But again, that was Cloughie. Shankly was another one. Some great football books about Shanks. And Malcolm Allison, Big Mel, what a character. So what's coming out in October? What have we got on your newsletter? What other books do you want to talk about?
It's a great time of the year, as it has been throughout the year, actually, but certainly I think it's coming up to that Christmas period as well, isn't it? So there's three books that I'm looking forward to that I've picked out. One being, we've just been talking about it, the 70s. There's one by Daniel Abrahams coming out, 71, 72.
Just done a podcast with Danny.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, football's greatest season. Yeah, so that'll be a really interesting read, because, again, just a fascinating. I think he says in the synopsis of the book where it's the time when, well, pretty much all the greatest footballers in the world were playing in one league at that particular time and in that season. So, and obviously you've got the characters of Don Revie, Brian Clough, and what have you, and the managers. So, what a great season. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I look forward to listening to your podcast. Is that out now?
Yeah, it's already out. I've done it last week with
I think I might
Daniel.
have seen it, yeah.
Yeah, he's a big Queen's Park Rangers fan, and that got with me pals, me Rangers mates, and they says that Dan's writing a book. So I'll give Dan a chat, give him a call, and we had a chat and recorded a podcast. But he's absolutely right. I mean, Derby County won the league in 1971-72 season on 58 points. Leeds were second, 57. Liverpool third, 57. Manchester City fourth, 57. Arsenal 52. Spurs 51. And Chelsea 48 coming seventh. Man United finished eighth that season. But yeah, it's a season that had everything. Franny Lee was top scorer on 33 goals. Malcolm Allison got a touchline ban. And he said, I mean, even the train robber's only got 25 years. He got a lifetime ban. Did Big Mel. And it was a season, of course, that Brian Clough, don't ask me again. Yeah. Ian Storey-Moore has just signed for Derby County. Please don't waste my time. And the next thing you see, Ian Storey-Moore, he'd signed at Manchester United because the Forest board wouldn't sanction it. They wouldn't sign it off. Clough had told Storey-Moore, and he'd, introduced him to the Derby crowd. It wasn't anything to do with Ian. What a great player he was, by the way. I recorded a podcast with Ian Storey-Moore, and he was telling me all about that in the 71-72 season.
I'm looking forward to reading that. It's a great start to a great decade as well. And again, when you think back to, I remember reading a fact in terms of, I think there's only been about 6 or 7 winners of the Premier League in how long ago go now? Almost 28, 30 years.
Yeah, well.
And you've always had Man United winning it, Chelsea, repeated winners. Obviously had Leicester City success, but I remember the 70s. I think the first 5 years of the 70s, I think it was a different winner every year, wasn't there? Of the league, if I remember. But it was always changing hands. It was never consistent. I think that's again just shows how different type of football, wasn't it? It was again. Level playing field. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but yeah, it was a great decade, and obviously starting off with that season. So I'm looking forward to that. Definitely that book.
Yeah, it was a fantastic time. That there was so many great teams, and sides like Ipswich Town, like Sheffield United, Stoke City, of course, all had competitive sides. I mean, the first 1969-70 winners were Everton. Then it was Arsenal, Derby, Liverpool, Leeds, Derby, Liverpool, Forest, Liverpool, and that led us then into 79-80 season when Liverpool won it again, and then 80-81 Aston Villa. But, QPR finished second in 1975-76. Actually, when they finished the season, QPR were top, but had to wait several days till Liverpool played, believe they played at Wolves. Because Leeds United certainly did in 71-72. Played at Wolverhampton Wanderers after the FA Cup final, because they were absolutely certain that they were going to win the double in the 71-72 season. But something happened along the way, and the Wolverhampton Wanderers players were really, really, really up for it, that probably, had it not been levelled at them, might not have been up for it so much. But again, that was the thing about Leeds. They always had that tarnished image. And I think very unjust at times, because I think Leeds were, in my lifetime, and I've had the pleasure of Alan Clark's company on a podcast, I think that Leeds United are the greatest team that I've ever seen play football.
Yeah. Oh, great team, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Absolute great team. There was such a great camaraderie with that players as well. They literally did play for each other, didn't they? That does sound like a bit of a cliche. That's what you hear on Sky Sports, but they really did. They really did, didn't they? They very much as a collective team.
Burnley central striker, great centre forward, Paul Fletcher. Fletcher said to me, Don Revie assembled a team of assassins.
Yes, yeah.
But you would want any one of them players in your team.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, Gabbie. Yeah, but just linking it back to the books. So that 71-72 season, and Leeds, etc., all around that time. I'm looking forward to reading that. Definitely, that comes out next month. Yeah.
So, what else have you got that's coming out next month on your newsletter?
The Undisputed, which is the Champions of Europe by Stephen Scragg.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, so it's his third in his trilogy. If you've read his first two books, I just can't wait to read that. His first two books was Frozen in Time, about the European Cup Winners' Cup, and then you've got Where the Cool Kids Hung Out, brilliant title. Yeah, and that was about the UEFA Cup, and this one's about the European Cup. So I think the subtitle is How the Gods of Football Became European Royalty. It's homage to the European Cup and the biggest club prize in football. So I think it talks about Di Stefano, Di Seo, Best, Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Dalglish, just incredible names of football. And when the European Cup, when you had to get into it, you had to win the league. Not like now you can finish fourth. And
it's a Super League, isn't it? It's a European Super League now. I mean, they call it the Champions League, but they're not champions. It's the European CSL by stealth. It's as simple as that. Because in those days, and I've done a couple of podcasts with Dennis Mortimer, and I said to Dennis, the thing is with you guys at Villa, you actually won the Football League. You won the Championship, and then you went on and played in the European Cup and won the European Cup. Now, these teams can get into the Champions League by finishing fourth. I mean, it's quite ridiculous, really. And I'm with you. I'm looking forward to that. I've got both of Stephen's books. And these Football Times, they're a great group of guys.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Stu Horsfield wrote that book, hasn't he, about the Brazil team of 1982.
Yeah, 1982. Oh, that's a brilliant book. That really is. Recommend that.
I've got it, but I haven't read it. And I've got
I recommend it. You'll be gripped from the start because his love of that 1982. He talks about when he's growing up, literally, and going home to watch because I think the times of the telly on the time I think the games were on at 5 o'clock in the evening, so rush back from school. Just a great story writer, like they all are, like you said, these Football Times. But
and he's wrote it as a kid, hasn't he? He's wrote it from them times, them memories as a kid, looking at that Brazilian team of 82. Yeah. And I think one of the greatest teams not to win the World Cup. For me, there's three teams that were great that didn't win it. Hungary in 54, of course. The Miracle of Bern. And there are a number of books out about the magnificent Magyars. We'll talk about them on next month's podcast, so we'll keep that on the back burner. But Gary Thacker has wrote Beautiful Bridesmaids Dressed in Orange. Again, I've got that book. I haven't read it, but I've interviewed Gary. What a very intelligent, knowledgeable man. Is. I've yet to interview Stephen Scragg. I mean, he's a big, big Liverpool supporter. But they produce some great work, these Football Times, and guys. I really enjoy listening to the podcast. And outside right, I've got to give a reference to Chris Lee. What is it? Origin Stories.
Origin Stories, brilliant
got that book yet, but I'm going to get that.
Oh, brilliant. Because that book, in many ways, I think I'd messaged him, I'd put something on Twitter. Yeah. And that book ticks a lot of books because I enjoy the history, I enjoy the football history. And that really, it's the pioneers who took football to the world. Yeah. That's what the subtitle of it. It literally goes around the world, country by country, of how it started in Argentina and everywhere. It's just amazing. Some cracking stories there. Absolutely amazing stories.
Very anglicised, isn't it? You know, their origins pretty much are English based, aren't they?
They are, yeah. There's quite a few, not just English, Scottish as well. He emphasised how much Scotland were involved at the start of football as well. So, but no, just brilliant book in terms of the history. If you ever want to know how it all started, and then the lawmakers, the Mavericks, entrepreneurs, and how it all started, it's just incredible.
No, I'm definitely going to order that book. It's one that's on my list. I've got that many books on my list, as you can gather. I don't read many of them, but I just have them for references.
You'll have to make time.
Yeah, I just absolutely. I love the game and I love the books. Another book that's coming out. There's two that's coming out that's going to fascinate me. Don Revie, a book by Don Revie.
Yeah,
that's coming out in October as well, and a book about Ron Greenwood. Again, I wasn't particularly a fan of either England manager. I wasn't a fan of Don Revie, definitely as an England manager. More with Ron Greenwood. He got the job after we beat Italy, didn't we? What was it, 2-0 at Wembley, and he was caretaker, and then they gave him the job. But I think that they wanted just somebody to, I suppose, paper over the cracks. And a little bit like the job that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is doing at Man United. I think Greenwood was given that job because of what Don Revie had done. And when you look at Don Revie, an absolute genius as a club manager. And I think that because of what a pig's ear he made of the national team job, we look at Don in a different way, and I think what we have to do, which is what I do, is, when I look at football players, say for instance my team, Trevor Francis, greatest Birmingham City player I've seen, and then please Trevor, don't come back in the twilight of your career, because people will remember you when you couldn't quite do it, and I think that people do remember Don as the manager that really fouled up England and had that infamous meeting where he told Alan Hudson, Tony Curry, Stan Bowles, Frank Worthington, Charlie George, Rodney Miles, you don't figure in my plans, I'd have sacked him there and then. And it's quite incredible because that Leeds United team had absolutely everything. And you think that from Bremner and Giles, Hudson and Curry, it's like very, very similar.
Yeah, well, they were when he took over at Leeds United, the side were languishing in the lower half of the second division at the time, weren't they?
Yeah,
so he not only took them to league champions, they were dominated, didn't they?
So everything. He changed the colours, he changed the badge. I mean, the badge had an owl in it, but Don Revie looked at that owl and says, "Birds are unlucky. I want something different." And you look at what Don done at Leeds United, just incredible. So it's a book that I do want. Yeah, I might not read it, but I definitely want it, and I'll dip into it because, again, Ron Saunders is another one that doesn't get the credit that he deserves. Again, another absolute genius of a manager. And some of the things that he's done with the Maverick players there, he'd say to Browne Little, call him in his office, again, do you know what, I'd love to punch you in the face. And Browne says, if it makes you feel better, do it. He used to do things just to wind the play, and it was genius what Ron Saunders did to those Villa players, and it was genius what Don Revie did to them Leeds United players. And again, Ron Greenwood had a great time at the academy at West Ham, etc., etc. One of the books. What else have we got to look forward to coming out in October? Them are two that I want to get me to.
Yeah, you've also got there's one that's coming out about the early years of the FA Cup. The very early years. I think it talks about how the British Army helped establish the world's first football tournament. So, in terms of the FA Cup, I know it's. Well, for some, let's say, it's lost its appeal, but not for me. I still think it's, the competition, isn't it? Club competition. I think the Champions League and things like that is almost, for some people, maybe the younger generation, have made the FA Cup not as important as it used to be in the 70s and the 80s, etc. But no, it's a book that's coming out about the early years, so it's going back to your Victorian times. So just fascinating, again, linked to the history of that. And there's actually another one as well, because it was due to come out, I think it was last month. Some of it been pushed back for one reason or with everything that's happening, COVID, etc. Is the history of women's football as well, which is fascinating. Again, you forget how big women's football was. Certainly, obviously, the Second World War and the popularity. It was incredible and massively. Some huge crowds they used to attract at the likes of Everton, at Goodison Park, etc. So, yeah, that'll be interesting as well. Just, finding a bit more about that.
I still don't think we've produced a better player than Lily Parr, who was one of the Dick Kerr ladies from the munition factory in Preston. A remarkable story, you're absolutely correct. They got banned for 50 years, women playing on.
They do, the FA Cup, and it's incredible now when you think about like what the FA did at that time, and said because it was getting too popular, wasn't it? That's why the FA Cup, the FA at the time.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. The girls worked in the munitions factory, didn't they? And they were playing games to raise funds for the war efforts, and they got so great a crowd. I mean, I know that in modern times that the girls in the WSL, I think Chelsea played Arsenal and got not record receipts, but they got record attendance. But that was largely because they were giving tickets away. Yeah. It's one of those, when you look at some of the women's attendances, they are massaged, shall we say. And I spent a number of years, I was a public announcer on the microphone at Birmingham City Ladies for a number of seasons. I had a great time, and I thought the kids were brilliant. It's a different game to the men's, and I would have liked to have seen them stay in the summertime and have their own game and their own identity. And I think all this, we want equal pay with the men's game and that. Sorry, Bab, you ain't never going to get that because your game is nowhere near as good. And I'll be honest, and I'm a big fan of football. I don't care who plays football, whether they're girls, whether they're boys, whether they're women, whether they're men. Football should be for all, but I think there's all different levels. You look at my team, Birmingham City. My players don't get paid as much as Jack Grealish for one reason. They ain't nowhere near as good as him. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to put football in relative terms. So watch the women's game, because it's a great little game that they play. There's some great stuff, great goals, great skills. But it ain't the men's game. It's nowhere near as good as the men's game. And they wouldn't compete on a one-to-one with the men's game. But it is a great game in its own right, and I did love it when it was a summer sport. But that's it. They want to play, September through till May. No,
I'm looking forward to that book. Certainly, around the history of it. It's just
Who wrote it, Andy? Do you know?
It's Jean Williams. She's a professor. I'm pretty sure I'm get that correct. Okay. I will have to check, but Professor Jean Williams writing that one. It's through Pen and Sword Books, right, who very much focus on, if you ever look at their website, they've got a small football sports section, but they focus a lot on war, World War II, etc. And obviously the history of, as we talked about, history of women's football,
because when you're going
that time was incredible.
Yeah, when we're going back to the wars, we're talking about the Second World War. I mean, a lot of the football players' careers were finished, wasn't they? I mean, Tom Finney, for instance. I mean, he didn't finish, obviously. He was only younger, but Tom Finney was driving a tank in Egypt during the Second World War. And again, when you're looking at it in today, imagine like a David Beckham or a Jack Grealish driving a tank in the war. It's just quite incredible, isn't it? That what our football players. I think, is there a book about the service to the country that players did in the Great War or the Second World War?
There is, and I'm trying to think of it. I think there's one coming out actually.
Okay.
And maybe we'll pick it up on the next podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But I'll jot that down. I'm pretty sure there's one coming out later in the year, and it might be early next year. I think it's about the footballers during that period. So
do you write that down? And so we'll look at that. Want to look at the Hungarians as well, so we'll reference them. I also want to talk about the coaches as well, the old coaches that played such a prominent and important part in football. Jimmy Hogan being one.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you were also talking about away from English football, there's Bella Gutman.
Oh, what a legend. Benfica and cursing Benfica.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible book. The Greatest Comeback.
And Ernie Erbstein as well. I mean, Erbstein, who was the manager, the coach of the manager of the great El Grande Torino side. Him and Bella were literally on the way to a concentration camp, having a chat, and decided to do a bunk. And I think the one ended up in Paris and the other one ended up in Budapest. They were hiding out from the Nazis and went on and changed the face of European football. It's quite
remarkable, isn't it?
And I think there's a great book about the Jewish input into association football, isn't there? I can't remember the name of the book, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to help me. I did hear it, I'm sure, on Talk Sport. So, again, that's another one that we must have a look at, the Jewish input in football, because there was a school of thought that believed that the Jews were an inferior race and were quite not very strong and powerful, but these Jews really danced and put their indelible mark on the game of football. I know the book you're referring to, and I cannot for the life of me think of it off the top of my head. It'll come back to me. We will talk about that on next month's podcast, because I'm sure I heard it on Talk Sport, somebody talking about it today or yesterday. I think does your rabbi know you're here? Something like that. I think it may well be. I think it might well be. It's something along those lines. But a lot of those Jewish coaches are just incredible what they do. What else have we got on your news? That Bella Gutman, though. Sorry, just on the Bella Gutman, though, in terms of when he lifted it twice, the European Cup, didn't he? And then because they wouldn't give him that price, I think it was he was asking for a bit more money, wasn't he? They wouldn't give it to him, so he put a curse on them for 100 years, and that stayed, hasn't it, ever since? I mean, it isn't the fact that they're cursed, it's just the fact that they haven't been very good. That's the thing. I mean, there's a gypsy's curse on Birmingham City. I remember when Saunders took over, I mean, he made the players paint the soles of the boots red and put crucifixes up and the floodlight pylons. Barry Fry done that in the 90s when he come to Birmingham, of course. And Birmingham have been rather unsuccessful, but it's got nothing to do with Madame Racina's curse to Birmingham City. It's got everything to do with they couldn't run a bath, that football club of mine. So I'm guessing Benfica, it was something similar, and it wasn't actually the curse of Bella Gutman. It's just that they wasn't very good. Or not as good as the opposition, shall we say, because they did get to a couple of finals, so they must have still been a bloody good team. So what else have we got on your newsletter and your website? It's a fantastic website, by the way. Thank you. Well, I think the website, and I'm always open to suggestions of anyone, but what I do is very much put out new releases that's come out recently, as well as books coming soon, and then I try to spread it out in terms of various. One of the interesting things was I first set up the website, it took me around 3 months actually to build it. I've never built a website before. Obviously, there's a template involved, but it's actually putting the books on there and putting it into categories. So when I was looking for football books, I'd look for one about my team, and then maybe I want to look something about a history or a biography or whether about a player or a manager. So I'll split it out, to the various categories, etc. But in terms of a newsletter, I welcome people to subscribe. But on there, I put on the releases from the previous month and the three that's been most wished for through, so I can see in terms of who's, what of the books are most popular. And certainly the ones from last month was The Forgotten Champions, the Everton's last title in 86-87. TC was in that yeah, that's it. So, that was incredible time for Everton, wasn't it? And Howard Kendall, of course, wasn't it? So it was. And Howard wasn't always successful at Everton. When Terry joined, they put an hangman on his garage. I mean, it was like Everton. The gates at Goodison Park were really, really low, and when Terry went in there at Everton, Howard really was a low ebb. And when you look at what Brian Clough done at Nottingham Forest, a lot of the players at Everton were already there, and he brought in one or two others. But, something happens in a football club, and the magic must be sprinkled, and Kendall's done that. And as you say, it was the last league title that Everton won, and a grand old team.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the most wished for. I've got in my newsletter, and I always put my 3 recommended reads, and 2 of them already touched on. Natural, the Jimmy Greaves story, The Age of Football. And there's another not so well known, but a fantastic book that came out a few years called The Boy on the Shed. Paul Ferris. Yeah, so a lot of people won't know of this player. Newcastle United fans will do. He was the youngest ever first teamer. But just a brilliant story. He grew up in Northern Ireland, so of all the, he talks about the troubles and whatever. It's just a fantastically written story. So that's one of my recommended reads. And then, the rest of the newsletter is obviously just talking about the books that's coming up in October, and as well as promoting your great podcast and the work that, we're doing Book Corner.
And there's
a lot going on around this time of year with the recent Telegraph Sports Book of the Year, and just announced today was the long list for the William Hill Sports Book of the Year as well. So there's some fantastic books that's in there as well, including Michael Calvin's new book, who's one of my definite favourite writers. Whose Game Is It Anyway? Brilliant book. Great writer.
Off the top of your head, what titles are on the long list, and when does the long list become the short list? And we're going to put all this, because when you say that, it's your podcast. This is our podcast now. It is Book Corner. Yeah. It's a monthly Book Corner. We've got a page, a chapter of my life, and we'll put all stuff on there and retweet and keep the literary side there, as well as on the Current View and various feeds that we've got on Facebook and Twitter. But some of is it always at this time of year, and when does the long list become the short list, and when does the winner get announced?
Don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's 15 that have been entered into the long list, and that's all sports books, so not just football. I mean, there's 3 football books. I know there's 3 football books selected out as 15. The one I just mentioned. The other one's called Dream Factory, written by another great writer called Ryan Bowdy, which is about the likes of Marcus Rashford and some of the players that's coming through now, and the Dream Factory really, in terms of the footballers that's coming through. And I think the other one, it's based, Simon Cooper, Barcelona. It's the inside story of the world's greatest football club, Barca. So Simon Cooper's another great writer. In fact, his book is Football Against the Enemy. Was the first book I ever read. I remember reading. Yes, when it came out in, goodness knows when it was now, but I think that was one of my first books I ever read. So I've got a kind of connection to him. But there's 3. It's been nominated today, and the shortlist, I think it might be maybe a month's time it comes out.
Okay.
If you check out, I'll share something on the page as well as on our podcast when it's coming up. So, it's normally around about this time of the year, and I think there's another one in the early part of next year as well, and it'll come to me which paper it is.
Approximately how many books have you got in your library, Andy?
Oh, that's a question. Well, the ones I've got in front of me in my, let's say, office, I've got 3 bookshelves here. Mm-hmm. I'm scanning over. I've probably got about 300 in here. Probably more than that, I dare to say. Yeah. If the wife was here now, she would say that's nowhere near. I've got lots more that are not on display. You're talking a few hundred. It's a lot of money that's been spent over the year.
Oh, absolutely. Have a guess how many books I've got on display, Andy.
How many you got on display?
Yeah.
10.
None.
No. It might be a bit sad, but I like to look at a good bookcase. I don't know what it is. There's something about it.
For 15 years to get my missus to have a bookcase, because I think it looks fantastic, and all she thinks it is something that attracts dust. And she hasn't got an allergy to dust, but she just won't have one. And I say, Bab, a bookcase there with all my football books would look absolutely splendid, but she ain't having it, mate. So I do envy you having all those books on display.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it when you see, because a lot of people have been doing with obviously COVID, etc.
Yeah.
You see them being interviewed on the BBC and the news channels. They've got the bookcase behind them, haven't they? And I always find myself, I'm not really listening to what they're talking about. I'm trying to look at the books behind them, see what they've got. Is there any football books in there? So yeah,
I think you can tell a lot by it's almost like a through the keyhole thing, isn't it? When David Frost used to go in there and you'd look at some of the ornaments and that, try and guess who is. Well, I can tell who you support. You support Forest, you do, or you support Birmingham or QPR. I can see your Stan Bowles book there. You must be a QPR. But there are a lot of fans that like all different football books of all different clubs because they just love football, and my books are of all football players and football clubs as well. So I just think it's fantastic, the amount of different books of different clubs. And the more you do podcasts, the more you get an inkling into the history of the club. And
definitely,
it's surprising how many teams I actually like now and watch on the TV through just talking to former players and fans that have wrote books about their clubs.
Do you know, you're spot on as well. You know, Millwall, let's say, they might have a bit of a reputation, but I could pick a couple of brilliant books. There's one, Family by Michael Calvin, I mentioned just a bit earlier. Yeah. He did a great book where he spent a season with them. And there's another book where I read recently, Brian King, the goalkeeper, in the 60s and 70s. And he's got his autobiography come out, I think it was early part of this year, called The Lions King.
Yeah.
And it just tells you just get a different kind of, there was a ferocity about the Millwall fans, etc. But when you read the book, you understand they're a family, same as every other football club. You know, they're just passionate. They're just passionate in one way or another, aren't they? But you get a different kind of angles. You see what I mean? In terms of once you delve into a bit of the history and the story behind them.
Oh, absolutely. I was listening to a podcast the
other day. Dynamic.
Yeah, with the Portsmouth fans saying how great the Portsmouth fans are, and Fratton Park's a little ground and we're really passionate. You know, we're probably the most passionate and iconic fans that we have in English football. And I thought, you've never been to the Den. Or Upton Park. You know,
Well, absolutely. Well, Brian King says that. He says in that book, actually, when his first game, you know, the Millwall fans behind it, he did not have a good game, and they told him when he was leaving the ground, he was walking out, and there's apparently a few Millwall fans waiting for him, and basically telling him, you need to get better, or you're not going to be here for long. But then after a few games, they loved him because he naturally became a bit of a hero there. So
because Alex Stepney was a Millwall goalkeeper, wasn't he? He started there at Millwall.
Yes, that's it, yeah.
Played one game for Chelsea and then got sold to Manchester United.
Yeah, and I think that Chelsea player, by the way, you were thinking of, was it Marvin Hinton?
That's the one. That's the one.
That's just come back in the head.
Marvin Hinton. Yeah.
There you go.
He's the player alongside Peter Simpson that Uddy would have had instead of Jack Charlton, I've got to say. But there you go. And I think that ties it up nicely for this month. I think it's been an absolute wonderful, joyous hour and a half. It's been...
Wow. Yeah.
It's been an hour and 34 minutes, so we've done the game plus injury time as well. It's been it's just been a great little chat. We will reconvene next month where we will just talk books, Andy. Excellent. Thank you very much for inviting me on as well. So look forward to catching you again. So Andy, I haven't invited you on. It's your podcast. Yes, okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So you're not a guest. You're a co-presenter. Thank you. Oh, you've put me onto another level now. Co-presenter, excellent. Well, that's what we call ourselves: hosts, co-presenters. But it's been, as I say, a wonderful hour and a half, mate. Yeah. And I look forward to the next part 2 of Book Corner, where we're going to be talking about the old coaches, the Hungarians. I also want to touch upon a little bit of international football with the Austrian team as well, the wonder team of Austria, because there's a great book out. Again, I've got, but I haven't read it, and some great players, because them Austrians really sit nicely in the pantheons of footballers. One of the top dogs, don't they? What a team they were. Hugo Meisel, what a manager and coach he was. So till next time, mate, thank you very much, sir, and thank you everybody for listening.
Good to speak to you. All the best, everyone, and happy reading.
Cheers. Chat out a bit.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What do Devontae Adams, George Kittle, Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel, and Amon-Ra St. Brown all have in common? Well, besides being some of the most reliable hands in the game of football, they're also the stars of the new Netflix series Receiver. From the same team that brought you the show Quarterback, Receiver takes you deep inside the huddles, locker rooms, and personal lives of 5 of the best pass catchers and playmakers in the NFL. Catch Receiver now playing only on Netflix.